What's up, guys? This is Cody with F is for Fanatic. Please, please, please go check out White and Sons Wood Creations. They do any custom LED signs, businesses, your favorite college or NFL sign. Go check them out. It is a duo, a small business. They're made right in the USA in Georgia. It's just a wife and a husband. They do it in their garage, and they are killing it with the products. I'm gonna put their Twitter page in the link below in the description. So go check them out. Made in the USA, quality built, and go help out a small business. Today we have Holly on from High Top Sports. How you doing, Holly?
Cody, my man, how are you today? Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, just another day in paradise here in the Midwest. We actually have a decently nice day, so I'm gonna try to get out in the garage here in a little bit and get that cleaned up for the garage setup. So
I like it.
We are talking. I brought you on to talk because you are the rule guru, and you are obviously unfortunately a FSU fan. And so there's big news about the divorce about that. So let's do rule changes first.
Fair enough. Yeah, there's been a couple of different proposals. Now, the one thing I want to make sure we talk about, these are not rule changes. These are rule proposals. So
Okay.
they still have to go through the voting cycle. They still have to be vetted, and they still have to be signed off on. So these are not guaranteed changes that are going to be a part of the sport that you and I love so very, very, very much, college football. But there are a couple of these that I thought were a little bit interesting. There's really probably two, maybe three that really stood out that could potentially alter a game,
Okay.
or at least have a very, very minimal effect. Now, going into the rule changes, the one thing I want to kind of point out here is I'm not sure why they're doing it. And what I mean by that is I went back and I looked at some statistics, and I think we were kicking this around Thursday when
Yeah.
we were doing just the call-in show and just kind of rambling with the normal banter that we have.
Yeah.
But in 2018, the average college football game was 3 hours and 16 minutes. And now, with all the money that it seems to have now flowed into college football, and it's all about a money grab, and it's all about advertisement and eyeballs and all these different things and streaming platforms and linear and all this stuff, right? Over the last 4 years, in 2022, the average college football game was 3 hours and 22 minutes. So I'm not sure what the motivation is for the NCAA to want to shorten these games. It's not going to change the kickoff times, right? We know for a
Yeah.
fact that it's very regimented, that we have a noon kickoff, a 3:30 kickoff. You sprinkle in your post 3:30s where you may have a 7:45 and like maybe the 6:30s on ESPN2 or ESPNU, something like that. And then you've got your prime time game, which is typically right about 8 o'clock. And then of course your sleepy time games, which I refer to as the Pac-12 stuff, where you're basically either drunk, falling asleep, kind of tired of watching college football, but it's great background noise. But you just throw it on the TV in the bedroom and you fall asleep watching Washington State and Oregon. You don't really
Yeah.
care. That's just kind of how you end your night, right?
For
But
a
those
night.
games are regimented,
Yeah. For a night guy like me, I love them. I'm glad there is a Hawaii kickoff
Oh yeah,
late.
for sure.
Like, just because I'm up already. So, my thing is I have a theory on this, and we kind of talked about this yesterday at around the table sports. Shout out to Ty for having me on. We will be back on again. We're doing a special segment next Saturday with him, but I think what they're trying to do is I think they're trying to get another game squeezed in somewhere and it be a Pac-12 game because I think they're worried that the Pac-12 is gonna essentially dissolve. So I think what they're trying to do is shorten enough of the game to sprinkle in one prime Pac-12 game. Does that make sense?
It does, to a certain degree. To a certain degree. And by you saying that they want to sprinkle in another primetime game, who is they? Because
NCAA.
12 just lost any type of linear rights to being able to broadcast. At least it's essentially done. But they've lost just about any linear rights to media broadcast. They're gonna go 100% streaming, and then Apple was gonna be
Yeah.
their primary go-to. Apple said no, thank you, and just signed a massive contract with Major League Soccer.
Yeah.
Major
Yeah.
That's I don't know.
So that deal is gonna get done.
They have an open platform. They can play a game anytime they want. There's nobody to get in the way of.
Yeah. This is my thing though. Okay, maybe not Pac-12 game, but I think they're trying to. I think if they shorten it, they can squeeze one more game in.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that. Maybe you finally
Because
get into like a 5:30 game. You know,
how
you've
many
got your 12, your 3:30, maybe a 5:30 kickoff that we've never really seen before. Something like that.
Yeah, how many times is Alabama, Georgia, and Florida kinda all playing too close together where you can't catch them all? You know what I mean?
Um,
Like, you
yeah.
gotta flip back and forth, or like a prime Big Ten game, like a Ohio State, Michigan, and then Alabama's playing, let's say I don't know the schedule right off the bat, but
Well,
let's say Alabama,
The Big
Georgia.
Ten loves noon games. I mean, that's for some odd reason, and I really don't understand it. The
It's
Big Ten is
warmer
in
then.
love with 12 o'clock kickoffs. I mean, if
12
you
o'clock.
that's
12
their
o'clock's
thing.
warm. It's warm.
So it's 3:30, right? I mean, it's still a little bit warm, I guess. I don't know. Well, they let me look. They get night games too. The Penn State whiteouts that they've done, where
Yeah,
it's
they
the
do
night game.
that.
It
Yeah,
feels like they just hate the 3:30. They hate the 3:30 mess. Either it's a noon kickoff or it's a night game. But look, I mean, if you're in
so
Nebraska,
where would you even fit it though? Where like,
that's what I'm
that's my
saying.
thing
Like, I mean,
also is
you're trimming this up by a couple of minutes. I don't know. It just
yeah,
feels weird. It feels weird.
odd.
We'll knock these things out. We'll go over what the NCAA is. I guess it presenting as some possibilities. And look, I mean, if it shaves off 19 minutes of a game, sure, but we'll
Yeah.
go over some of the major ones, and I'll struggle to find where they're going to make any significant change in the duration of a game without giving up some advertising money,
Oh, they're
which
not
they
gonna do
certainly
that.
aren't going to do that, right?
No,
Of
no,
course,
no.
of course. So they've got the first one that's out there, and again, these aren't 1 to 20 in order or anything like that. These are just kind of how I put them together. Um, you cannot, as a defense, call timeouts back to back. If the
Okay.
offense calls a timeout and they put their offensive set on the field, the defense can call a timeout based on whether or not they were able to match it and whether or not they liked what they saw on the field. So you can have an offensive timeout backed up to a defensive timeout.
Okay.
However, you cannot have a defensive timeout backed up to a defensive timeout. They're calling it the ice the kicker rule. Really, I think that more that we talked about it after Thursday, it's more of you just can't get your shit straight rule. Like I
Yeah.
I called a timeout. I put my defense out. I didn't really like what I saw, so I'm going to call another timeout. Nah, player, you just had, either a TV timeout that's a minute and a half or a 30-second timeout on the field to get your personnel right and to get set. So a defensive timeout backed up to a defensive timeout. I kind of agree with that. I
Now
don't really think it's going to make a huge impact, but I agree.
do you think possibly now it's let's say 4th and 1,
Hmm?
okay? You roll out essentially you roll out the punt team,
Yep.
and then you take a timeout. You roll out the offense, and it forces them to take a timeout.
Yeah, defensive timeout. Yep.
And that's okay still.
That's still fine. That's
Okay.
still fine. You just can't take a timeout as so if like the offense kind of you think it's going to be a punt, they throw their offense on the field. You put
Yeah.
you're like, oh, we weren't prepared for that. I'm going to call a defensive timeout. That's fine. What you can't do is that if they come back out on the offense in an offensive set that looks crazy or something that you weren't prepared for again, you
Okay.
can't take another defensive
Okay.
timeout. You just can't stack two defensive timeouts back to
Okay.
back.
Which happens.
It does. It does. I
Rare,
mean,
but not.
I've seen that more than I have the double timeout to ice the kicker.
Yeah, I now that we're actually talking about it, I can think of at least 2 or 3 times that has happened, just in the games I watched at Florida,
Oh yeah, and it
just for
infuriates you
Florida.
as a fan. You're like, what
Oh,
is
yeah.
going on?
Oh, and
We've
then they
just
cut the
wasted two
commercial.
timeouts of a half, and we can't even get the defense set. Yeah, It's crazy.
Yeah. So that's okay. I like. What's the next one?
All right. So, okay, at the end of a first quarter or a third quarter, typically you cannot end a quarter on a defensive penalty.
Okay.
So, whatever the case may be, whether it's pass interference, offsides, whatever, you just can't end the play. You can't end the quarter with a defensive penalty. Typically, it's going to be like a defensive holding call or a defensive pass interference or something of that regard. Now, in this situation, where if it's the end of the third quarter, there's a defensive penalty at the same time that the clock hits zero. Beforehand, nobody moves. They would walk off the penalty, and it's an
Okay.
untimed down. Okay, but that being said, now they're going to say no, you flipped the field. So that one just feels like it could be it's going to be situational on whether it has really any impact. But let's think about if you're an away team and it's 4th and 1, right? You're inside the one. It's 4th and goal. The defense hops off sides and the clock expires.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that typically would give you another down in the position that you are. And if you've got yourself down there on, the side of the field where your fans are,
Yeah.
well, then you get to have that down again in like a little bit of friendly territory, right? This
Yeah.
time around, no, the quarter's over. Walk it back to the other side. Now you can be right in front of the student section and all that, and now that's a whole different dynamic of being able to hear, being able to execute things like that. Now the second quarter and the fourth quarter are not affected by this. You can't end the half or the game on a defensive penalty, just the first and third quarter. Again, it's very situational. Not sure how much of an impact it's going to make, but it could change the dynamic of like, where you are on the field in a very high pressure scenario.
Yeah, I would think the biggest thing is if you're kicking into the wind as opposed to out of the wind.
Yep.
So, yeah, I guess it's not going to be a problem until it affects one of our teams.
It's not a problem until it's a problem, right? It
Yeah.
feels like it's nothing until there's a 20-mile-an-hour wind, and
Yeah.
or just a fog storm rolls in,
Yeah.
at the end of a football game when somebody's tossing around equipment, and you got to be able to go from kicking from one side of the field that maybe has a little bit better visibility or better wind or something like that. But I
Yeah,
mean,
most
look, again,
definitely.
we won't know it affects anything until it does, and then we'll all point to this rule and be like, we knew it was stupid.
Yeah, most definitely.
Um,
What's the next one?
so the third one is the clock will continue to run after an offense gains a first down except for inside 2 minutes. I'm 50-50 on that one. That's essentially an NFL rule.
Okay. So except for inside, so it still stops on a 2-minute drive.
Inside 2 minutes. There is no 2-minute warning, but if you get a first down, you do get the clock stoppage to reset the sticks.
2 minutes in the fourth and the second, 2 minutes in the fourth, or 2 minutes in every quarter?
In the halves. So it would be the second and the fourth only.
Okay. So
it just can't impact the last 2 minutes of a half where there would be a change of possession.
That's where they're trying to speed the game up.
Right. And that would be a big one. That would be a very, very, very big one. Which, look, how many times you get a first down and, you're just waiting for the old guys holding the sticks to get their asses down here, just to reset. I don't know. I think with the way that college football is treating the athletes, I don't think that that's wrong to do anymore. They already get a 40-second clock now.
Yeah.
They're being treated basically like professionals.
Mhm.
Shelton on Thursday said, well, go ahead and just put 2 feet in. Most of the time they do get it in, but that's the one that I think is going to be the biggest impact on just keeping that wheel churning
Now,
down the field.
Now, I kind of like it, and this is why, because how many times do we have to take referee timeout because they can't figure out if the game clock's running, if the play clock's running, if neither are running. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I mean, Ty made a comment last night they had to take 10 minutes to figure out what down it was last year during an Alabama game.
That's right. That's
Like,
right. It still got it wrong, if I'm not mistaken.
yeah.
Still got it
So,
wrong.
and I think what bothers me is why not just keep it running in the 2 minutes? I guess it's because they don't want that's pretty impactful and they don't want, the chain gang being slow to the first down affecting the game.
Right.
But then why even do it? You know what I mean? It's an odd rule. Out of
Well,
all
yeah,
the
but then you
rules
would have to give a 2-minute warning, which is another stoppage of play, and that's another minute and a half break. I mean,
yeah,
I think it's you're burning the candle at both ends. There is no 2-minute warning. You go right from, you know,
yeah,
2 minutes and 2 seconds into, a minute and 58 seconds, and the wheel just keeps turning, with no 2-minute warning at all. Whereas, that'd be a break for the NFL. It's a free timeout if you use it correctly. They don't get that. So the clock's still turning. That's the other thing, is it's almost makes it a little bit tougher for college to go from keeping everybody in a situational awareness type of state that says, hey, now from here on out, a first down, you get a minute to set the clock, and the clock will
mhm.
stop for you. So I don't know. It's a dual edged sword. I think that'll probably have the biggest impact on the length of the game, though.
Yeah, most definitely. And then there's one about substitutions, right?
I saw that one, and I didn't really get the full understanding of it. I mean, I already know now that if the offense substitutes,
Yeah.
that no matter what, even if they set the ball, the defense gets to substitute.
Now
But if that's the case, then how long can the defense hold the offense
that's th-
hostage before they
that's the
before they let the ball up?
that's well, it was actually reverse. So the
Okay.
problem is well their problem is defense is holding the offense hostage in a Tennessee situation when they're running plays after plays after plays and you either have to have a guy flop on the field or he, fake an injury,
Sure.
just to get catch your win because some of these offenses are moving so freaking fast. I mean, they're hiking the ball every, I think, 12 seconds or 15 seconds is what Tennessee ran last year. And so what they're doing is the defense is subbing in late just to try to get that
Yep.
extra breath out or a late sub. Now, this is what I proposed. And with this big massive following that we got, hopefully somebody from the NCAA here in Indianapolis is listening right now. Um, I think the substitution should have a 20-second clock. Okay. So as soon as the offense subs, the 20-second clock starts. Just like checking in any other game, you have to check in, right? Soccer, you
Yep.
got to go check in. Football, you got to go check in before you get on the field at lower echelon levels. Now, I propose 20 seconds, and if the defense isn't out on the field in 20 seconds, you rung what you brung. Whatever's out there is out there, or you burn a timeout.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. I mean, look, they're already doing that. I believe with tackle eligible, in certain situations and things like that. So there's obviously times currently where you have to declare, um, and go from there. So I think that one could have a big impact on some of these faster offenses, to say the absolute least.
Which everybody complains about the flop, right?
Hmm.
But they got to remember, um, this game is very, these coaches are playing chess, not checkers, and it is a part of the strategy. There is a strategy one. You're going to run every 15 seconds. You're gonna snap the ball, and the other strategy is okay. Well, we got to figure out how to stop them somehow. We can't just call timeouts all the time. So we got to figure it out. And when you're letting the offense just run down the field like that, that's unfortunately, unless they fix it to where, like the subbing thing, um, unless they do something, it's gonna be like that. And people hate to see it, but
Yeah, but I mean,
well,
look,
Tennessee fans hate to see it. Not everybody hates it. Some people understand it.
sure.
You
Sure.
know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Look, the pace of the offenses in college right now, And it's even kind of starting to seep into the NFL a little bit. Excuse me. It's forcing these defenses to do something because look, in college, you just don't have the depth for that. You just
Yeah.
don't have the talent depth, especially if you're talking about, a high level top 10 team that's been consistently top 10, and they're playing somebody in the 30s. They're
Yeah.
ranked overall in the 30s. Look, these guys just don't. And look, from a standpoint, and look, this is from experience, from a standpoint of playing football, it is a lot less taxing on you to play offense than it is defense,
Yeah.
because as an offensive player, you know where you're supposed to be, and you should already know your angles, your steps, your breathing patterns. You know when you're about to go into a sprint.
Yeah.
You know everything. You know if you get to almost take a play off, unless if you're an offensive lineman, sometimes you've seen it before. Sometimes they get a play off because all they have to do is guard their zone and nobody comes into their zone. So that's just a free play. But
Yeah.
if you're a defensive player, every single play is read, react, chaos, this, that, the other thing, right? And there's a reason why it wears defenses out faster than it wears offenses out. It's just the nature of knowing exactly what everybody else on your side of the ball is going to do in unison, as opposed to having to wait and try to figure it out on an individual basis and just watch the play unfold and then react. That's mentally and physically taxing to be able to do that play after play after play. And if, heaven forbid, you're a defense that's up against one of these kind of offenses and you're able to somewhat slow them down, but it's still a 9-play drive, like you're done. You're done.
Yeah.
You haven't been able to sub. You're
No.
just you're sucking wind as fast as you can breathe it. And then the offense just feels like they're always just fresh and jammed up and lively as can be. And look, for the offense, it doesn't mean that they can't run the clock down. They just don't make a substitution. They keep their base offense on the field. You can't sub either. And they just can wait until their guys are like, okay, we've had a little bit enough right there. Let's go back at it. And then defenses are just dying out there.
Yeah, and then then essentially defensively you're like, well, like for Florida, if Tennessee gets the ball at the 20, am I putting Big Dez out there? Like is he gonna make a 14 play drive
Right.
when it's bang 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 bang? You know what I mean? So then you're like, well, what package am I gonna put out there? I can't put Big Dez out there. He's 320 pounds. He'll be toast but for the rest of the game, because they're running so fast.
Yeah. Look, a 25-yard play down the field. Let's just say it's the third or fourth play of the drive, a 25-yard play down the field. Your entire defensive line has to pick themselves up, turn around, run to get set, because they're not going to sub. And they're going to let the players get back, but you're running when you're not even playing or when you're not
Yeah.
even in the play. So, look, I mean, there's a positive behind it, and I can see what the NCAA is doing with that one. Certainly better than some of these others that we've talked about here. But it'll be interesting to see which ones get through. And that's the other thing is some of these seem silly. They don't seem to have much of an impact on the game. Some of them seem like they could have a significant impact on the game. And like the one, like obviously what we're talking about now with the substitution rule could
Yeah.
just change the way the game is played entirely.
I
So this will be interesting to watch.
I wish they would revise the targeting call, truthfully.
That's a big one for me. Look. So we'll touch on that here just real fast, right? So if there's considered targeting on the field, then and they review it and they determine that it's not targeting, and the player gets to stay, well, then there shouldn't still be the 15-yard penalty. You
Yeah.
already determined that it's not a targeting call, and that's what you called. You called a targeting penalty. If
That's
it's turned over and the guy's on the field, walk that 15 yards back off. I don't like, why do you get to keep the penalty if we determine that it wasn't actually a penalty and the player's still on the field? Like, what?
I
That one
didn't
seems a no-brainer.
I didn't even think of that. Okay. That that's not even where I was going with it, but that is a great that's like I mean, they review it as if it's a turnover or a catch. Like if it's not a catch or it's not a fumble, you don't get to keep the ball.
Right. They walk it back to wherever the spot
Yeah.
was,
It's
but that's the
so
thing. If it's called on the field as a penalty, but then they determine because they have to review it because the player is going to lose eligibility either for the current game or potentially the second. But if they determine it's not a targeting call, then there's no penalty. Like
I
one offsets they offset one another, right?
I
Walk
don't
it back.
I don't like the one and done either. I that really, really, really bothers me. The one targeting call and you're out for a full game, and if it's past the second or if it's into the second half, you're out the next week.
Yeah, for the first half. Yeah,
Yeah, I don't like that. That's bad. That's got to go. And this is why. In the NFL, you get 2
two.
unsportsman like conduct. Number 2, these players are getting so fast. Gervon Dexter at 300 plus pounds just ran a 4.67 at the combine. That is for a 300-pound man, that is blazing. And you're going to tell him that he is at full sprint and he's got to pull up? Now,
Or not
this
even pull up. What if you don't? What if you even if you pull up and you just go low and the running back goes low too? Well, you're still going to make head-to-head
it
contact there.
yeah, there's no and there's
There's
no
another
targeting.
person who has that you can't predict how the other person is going to go into the tackle, into the contact. So
Can
I go low because I'm trying to not get a targeting call, and he goes low too. I'm still targeting. It's just
and,
ridiculous.
and now correct me if I'm wrong. A running back cannot get called for targeting, correct?
It's very rare. I think I saw the Texas running back get targeted or get hit with it. Um, what was his face? Marshawn Lynch when they first
While
came
he
out with it
now I'm not saying as a block. I'm saying he has the
as a
ball
running
in his
back.
hand.
Yeah.
He's breaking one to the outside, and he lowers his head and makes head-to-head contact with a cornerback or safety.
Yep. I've only seen
That
it twice.
happens
I saw
all
it
the
once in
time.
college and once in the NFL. That was it. For all
That
the times
happens
that it happens. All right.
that happens all the time, and they're
All the
just
time.
like, oh well." So the running back's
Sorry.
allowed to do it.
Yeah, because the way they look at it is anybody on offense for the most part is defenseless. That's what they're trying to protect the wide receivers, and they have to blanket the they have to make the policy a blanket
So
policy.
they're
What they're trying
yeah,
to
they're
do is protect wide receivers, but they don't. Basically, they're turning running backs into just human battering rams,
yeah.
and nobody cares about the safety that's got to come up and charge the box when a linebacker is trying to fill the gap and the back gets loose. Nobody's looking out for that safety's health when he's got
I've
to go
seen
in there
plenty
and
of
he's
them.
got to put his head down.
I've seen plenty of them get their bell rung.
Oh, for sure. For sure. But
And
nobody ever
everybody
says a word
and you know
about
what
that.
happens? This is what happens. This is the difference between offense and defense. If a player takes a big hit and it gets called for targeting and it's helmet to helmet, it goes viral on Twitter and they get ridiculed.
Oh,
If
the
a
defensive
running
players.
back
Yeah, for sure.
if a running back plows somebody over, shrugs up, and goes helmet to helmet with the crown of his helmet, it makes top 10 ESPN, and it's looped over and over and over again for a big hit, and that's a problem.
Yeah,
That
for sure. For sure. I
that's
mean, because look, all they're doing is playing the same game, just
yeah,
on opposite sides of the hand egg that everybody's running around with. But you're right. I mean, look, the running backs they're taught to tuck their head down, keep the ball high, and just get as compact as possible to run into these guys as violently as they can.
yeah,
And then on the defensive
yeah. What
side,
player
you're
safety is about that?
none. But then on the defensive side, you're like, well, you can only go here. You got to hit here. If you take the legs out, they're going to worry about that. Well, you can't twist his ankle. But then they celebrate so much of the way that the offense plays from the running back position, and yet will vilify a defensive back for
Oh
making one
yeah,
hell of a
he
hit
will get
on a running back. It's just
he will get
it's
torched.
torched, torched.
Yeah,
Yeah, so that I'm surprised is not part of these rule changes. I feel like the NCAA has learned too much from what the NFL went through with all of the CTE stuff, and they're just like, you know what? we're just not touching it. We're just going to say that we've done everything we can to make
Yeah.
the game as safe as possible. We're not going to ease up on this at all, regardless of how hypocritical it may be from a football standpoint and a football fan standpoint. But they're not going to leave themselves open for anything that the NFL already had to go through. And from a business standpoint, I kind of get that.
Yeah, I get that. My thing is and when I say 2, you get 2. Only on the you only get 2 when it's not. I mean, there are some hits out there that are you they need to go. The Lewis scene, Kyle Pitts hit, that was not good. Nobody is teaching that. And then
Right.
again, the Marvin Harrison Jr. hit against Georgia, same team, but that hit, that should have been ejection right away. And I'm saying if they changed it, those type of hits should be ejection. But when they're on the fence, like the Ventrell Miller hit this past year, when they're on the fence, it shouldn't kick them out.
Or maybe we do something along the lines of what the NFL has done, right? So let's just say, and I'm just going to throw a name out there. Let's just say Ventrell Miller gets a targeting call, right? Is a penalty on the field for targeting.
Yep.
They look at it and they say the player did not target. Therefore, the player gets to remain on the field. However, he does have, it's almost like a soccer thing, right? He does have
Like
a
a
yellow
yellow
card.
card.
So you're in, but you got to play soft a little bit, because if you get hit with the second one, you lose
I
the
like
rest of
that.
this game and the second game. Because what that'll do is, even in a situation where you're trying to play with a little bit of violence, you got to play smart, and that will take one hair of a step off. And look, I think that's the way to do it. You don't
Yeah.
kick them out immediately. If they get one, and by the luck of the football gods, you get past the referees and you get to stay out there, but you get a second one, you're done.
Yeah.
You're done. I
Yeah.
think that's the way you do it. Is you give them one free pass. If they get to stay on the field the first time, you yellow card it. The second time, there is no such thing. If the flag is on the field and that's the call, you're done.
Yeah, so if NCAA, if you're watching, you know,
Tune in.
let yeah, let us know. We'll write it up for you. Um, all right, let's get on to this FSU ACC divorce, possibly pending.
Yeah, that's what it feels like, right? It's for anybody who's not been paying much attention. Last week, the Florida State athletic director, on a public forum. This was a live stream that anybody could watch, and apparently, just about everybody in the media was told, you might want to be on this one.
Oh, so it was dropped that something
He
hot was coming.
that was not an accident for the way that whole thing played out. You'd be remiss to think that in the landscape of big dollar college football, that shot over the bow that we'll talk about here in just a second wasn't maybe leaked to the media like, hey, you might want to carve out 20 minutes of your day to hear what's about to go down. But essentially, Mike Alford, the athletic director, presents data to the board of regents for FSU, and
Mhm.
flat out says it is impossible for Florida State to keep up with the SEC and the Big Ten based on the way that the current ACC payout is scheduled. And right now, as of 2024, 2025, that payout is a $30 million per year difference for FSU in the negative. Not meaning that we'll be in the negative, but that means that somebody like Rutgers will make $30 million more per
More.
year just on football and sports than FSU. That means that Vanderbilt will make $30 million more. Northwestern will make $30 million more. Illinois will make $30 million more, which is
Yeah.
absurd in what we're talking about. When you look at what FSU, based on the statistics that he also displayed for everybody to see and became probably the most shared screenshot around college football for the next 48 hours, what FSU contributes to the ACC, which by his numbers is 14% of the total media revenue that the ACC receives per year is generated by FSU by itself.
Okay. And what is Clemson?
Clemson is another 10%. I think it was closer to 11, but between
So
the two,
so they
it's
make
25. It's right at 25%
so
for
they're pretty close to making the same amount, right?
They do. Well,
Not
they
make,
make
but
7. Yeah, they
distribute.
make 7% of the total media revenue, meaning that two teams make up 25% of the revenue for the entire conference.
Okay.
Yet each team only receives 7% payout.
Okay.
So Wake Forest, Duke, the teams that aren't generating any revenue at all are getting
Miami.
the same amount of revenue. Yeah. Well, look, Miami has a national brand. They bring eyes. Some people just love to watch them lose because they're so burned by how good they were for so
I
long.
I do.
Yeah, that dude, I watch a Miami game. If I'm flipping channels and there's
And
4
they're
games
getting
on and Miami's
railroaded.
one of them, they're probably going to get my watch.
Yeah.
And
If
because I
they're
want to
getting
root against
railroaded,
somebody too, I need an enemy in college football. You know
yeah.
what I mean? That's like kind of how it's built. So look, I mean, this him doing that in such a public forum is not something I've ever seen in college football before. I mean, this is just we're just basically telling the ACC. It's like going to a family reunion and you've got that one crazy uncle that's just like, well, I'm not sure if anybody heard, but Carol and I are having marital problems. I was like, what's going on around here?
Yeah.
Well, like, Ken, you've always been really good on the grill, but I think this will probably be the last time I have any of your chicken. I just wanted to point that out. Like, it feels like this is he's standing and pontificating and saying, "We're out of here." I don't
Yeah.
know how or why or who's going to want us. I'm telling you, we're out. And the
Uh,
ACC has done little to nothing in order to respond to that, and which tells me that they've already just kind of said that the damage is done. Marriage counseling isn't fixing this thing, and this will be the last. This will be the last family
Now
reunion that we're
does
at.
the guy that made the announcement, does he
Yep.
have the invect power to pull them from the ACC?
Not directly. I mean, that would still come from the president and the board of regents, all of which were present for that meeting. However, even during that meeting, there were questions from the board who were not on camera. A couple of them were, well, one was, well, how much is it going to cost us to break the ACC agreement? Okay, again, seems like a very rehearsed thing. Like, why do you have a board of regents asking an AD such a pointed question? And he immediately 120 million to get out.
So he
Cool.
knew.
He knew, which tells you they've already done their vetting and they've already done, essentially all the work. And then there was a couple of other things, just the questions that were coming from the board to Michael Alford. It was like we're just. I mean, I don't know. I mean, by the time that this whole thing was done, by the time this whole presentation was done, it was like a Picasso the way that this whole thing
Yeah.
got put together. And like, look, it caused waves across
Yeah.
college
So
football.
this is my question. Is there
Mhm.
anything that the ACC can do to keep Florida State? Now, here's the thing though. If they do, now they have set the standard on how to get more money out of them, out of the ACC, right?
For sure. For
So
sure, yeah. I mean, one of the opportunities is right now there's equal revenue sharing, meaning
yeah,
that every team gets the same amount. Well, we just talked about how not every team, you know, is giving is putting in as much money
yeah.
as they're getting. So
Sounds
they
like
could do
socialism to
an
me.
exactly. They could do like an unequal revenue sharing with, based on the percentage that you contribute, you get a higher percentage. But
Yeah,
the other member schools would have to agree with that, which means that somebody like Wake Forest is going to have to sign off on taking a pay
that
cut.
ain't happening.
They ain't having that. Why would they do that?
No.
They know they have a contract. This is going to be a situation where FSU is able to break to break the contract with ACC. The only thing that comes into play outside of that, and the 120 is no big deal. Trust me, we just saw Texas and Oklahoma do it, and come to find out, they didn't have to go get a cashier's check from the bank. It's
Yeah,
spread out over 5 years. Like, that's a no-brainer. That's an
yeah.
easy,
Why
easy
not?
thing to accomplish. It's the grant of rights, which doesn't have anything to do with the ACC.
Now,
The grant of rights is ESPN saying that they own the rights to Florida State broadcasts, and if we were to
okay.
stray, then we don't get any money, not even the 7%, because ESPN is going to say that anytime we walk on the field, they should have got that money. That's the real sticking point.
Now I ask this. is it all about money?
Right now, it feels like it. Right
Because
now, it feels like it. Uh,
this is from the outside perspective. This
sure.
is how I look at it. So ACC is the top G. The top G can have as many girlfriends as he wants in the conference. Okay. FSU used to be the star. She FSU used to be the main chick. Now Clemson is the main chick. Okay. FSU is the side chick, and FSU doesn't like it. I know for a fact you do not want to watch a FSU game on a Thursday or Friday night. College football is Saturdays. Okay. And FSU wants to be a premier prime team that gets a premier primed slot. Okay. And the only time they do that is when they play it seems like a SEC team. And even sometimes it's Friday night. So, because the prime slot goes to Clemson usually. So, is this possibly that FSU is just tired of being the side chick eating at Olive Garden on Thursday while Clemson gets to eat Ruth's Chris on Saturday night and get all the attention?
Well, that would make sense if we were not getting the same amount of money as Clemson. At this point, it doesn't matter if we play Tuesday at noon. We're
But
still going to get
it does. As a
a little
FSU
bit.
fan, you can't tell me that it doesn't bother you that we get to throw jabs that you're playing on a Thursday night like high school.
Oh, I don't care about that. I really don't. I mean, because look on those games, like the Louisville game that was on a Friday, it was the only football game on. The viewership for that game was super high. It was even high in comparison to the other matchups for that week. I don't care if it's on a Friday.
So it doesn't
We were the
bother
only
you.
game on. We were the only game on.
It doesn't bother you that it's not a primetime Saturday game?
The primetime Saturday game, how many of those are there?
3.
3. We were the primetime Friday game, and not only we the primetime Friday game, we were the only Friday game.
Yeah.
So I don't mind that part. That
Okay.
doesn't mean anything to me at all whatsoever. And look, I mean, Florida State played this year on Friday, and we talked about it going into the game. We're the only game on at 8 o'clock on Friday, and we know that everybody is at home with family. They're not
Yeah.
going out, right? It made for a perfect. I mean, do you remember that stadium? Thing was packed to the gills. There were a ton of Florida fans there. Florida State, like the whole experience was awesome. So, I mean, I don't think it matters what day. I think it matters if you're getting convoluted and kind of washed into the other 90 games that are happening at the time.
So you
A
so
3:30 game might even suck worse than a Friday night game.
so I may have been missing the pitch there. Essentially what you're saying is it's on it's better for you for FSU to play on Friday night and get all the attention than getting a 3:30 and then Florida Georgia is also playing at 3:30. You know what I mean?
Sure, sure.
So
And
that's
like
what you're saying.
a little, yeah, that's part of it. But the
Okay,
other
I get
part
that.
of it is FSU, because of the way that Bobby Bowden built that school, where we played anybody, anywhere, Nebraska, Michigan. I mean, that's what FSU was built on. They have a national brand. Like
Yeah.
even like again, think about like the last 40 years for FSU has been absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
But if you go to the ACC network and you find how many game streams have been restreamed, FSU is number one year after year after year, even when we sucked. So
Yeah.
it's not a situation where what day the game is on. The brand itself will get us through the next couple of years, even though we're not going to make as much because the brand itself makes a ton of money.
Now, I asked this, are they pulling a Notre Dame and going independent, or are they going to go to are they going to find another suitor? Big 12, Big 10,
Yeah, look,
SEC.
it's going to be interesting, but I mean, at this point, if with the way that the Big Ten and the SEC are jockeying for position with one another, Um, I do not believe that the SEC wants the Big Ten to even dabble in the concept of getting into their market.
The
I mean,
Southern market.
the southern market, right? Like
Yeah.
let's just look at the Big Ten and where their geographical location is, right? And I'm not talking about media at this point. I'm talking about recruiting. Ohio actually has probably in the top 5, top 7, depending on the year, of national talent in that state. However, it's not a very big state. There's not a lot
Yeah.
of guys. If you look at the average star ranking, it's good, but that one state isn't going to be able to feed the Big Ten. California has its own thing, right? USC
Yeah.
and UCLA can do their own thing, but where are players going to go from Wisconsin, Michigan, Minnesota? If the Big Ten were able to get a team or two, if they were somehow were to sneak Miami, that gives them a foothold into the southern part of where the hottest recruiting is. You've got California, Texas, and Florida, and then Georgia, Alabama seem to kind of get hot and cold. But again, it
Yeah.
has to do with what they're able to churn out from an overall talent standpoint. I don't think the SEC would want any part of the Big Ten establishing some form. I mean, do you want Florida State with a Big Ten sticker on their helmet recruiting in Florida? You
I
probably
don't.
don't.
I
You
don't
probably
at all.
much less even if Florida State's not getting the talent, they're at least establishing relationships with coaches that the Ohio State can come and snake some people from us. But
Yeah, they don't need no help.
is Florida going to Indiana? No,
No,
that's not happen, right? So
that ain't
that there's a
happening.
lot more to that I think that the SEC would want to put walls around what they have, than it does to do with media rights and whether we play on Fridays and things like that. There's just a lot of dynamics, but we'll see
No.
what happens. It looks like the Big 10 or Big 12 is now going to go after some of the Pac-12 teams in order to pillage what's left out there, which could turn into a whole nother round of expansion if that were to happen.
Yeah, but they're a little
So
closer.
yeah, for sure,
Like a
for sure.
USC and Oklahoma geographically, logistically is a better than USC and Rutgers playing. I don't understand that.
That's a long travel too. Like, I mean, if they
Yeah,
were to put Rutgers, like let's just say USC and Rutgers play, which team takes the 4-hour plane trip?
and time zone change.
Yeah,
So 4 hours plus you're losing 3. It's just I don't know. I don't know logistically why you do it, but you know, obviously they're making money, so
they
they
know what they're
got it
doing.
figured out.
We don't.
Now I asked this, Holly, if 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 you were the man at FSU and you got to pick what conference or to stay independent, which one you going in?
So I've thought this through a couple of times, right? And there used to be a conference that existed before maybe some of you kids started watching college football, and Texas A&M, Oklahoma, Texas, and Arkansas all existed in it, and that would be one hell of
What
a
was that called?
SEC. It was called the Southwest. It was the Southwestern Athletic Conference.
SWAC?
It was something like that, but and then they disbanded. The Big 12 formed. Arkansas went to SEC. Missouri was still part of that as well. Because Missouri came from that same conference. But you have the traditional teams in in the regions now to where you could rebuild what that conference used to look like, which I think would be a great reincarnation of that, right? And then you look at where Florida State is. Florida State's got they're in the Panhandle, right? So you got
Yeah.
Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana. You could make a little division conference out of that thing, and just the way it segments out, I would be in the SEC first. The Big Ten, it's just the matchups don't excite me. I know that Florida State doesn't have a lot of traditional rivalries with the SEC. We've got
Yeah.
Florida, but outside of that, we play Georgia once in a while. We play Alabama once in a while. We play LSU once in a while. But there's a real other than geographical location. Nor do we have anything with the Big Ten. So for me, it would be what's the experience of the game going to be like? Well, I would rather have an away game in Baton Rouge or a home game with Auburn, where Auburn's what? I mean, we're talking about a drive away. I mean, I think
So
those
you
experiences
want to
would be
go
better
into the SEC?
in the SEC and say in the West. I would say that FSU went to the West. Say Clemson or Miami comes, and I would put them in the East.
Sorry.
No, you good?
Hopefully I was muted. Um, Yeah. So you're saying the SEC now? If you stick Florida State in the SEC right now,
Mhm.
how do you think they fare out?
Um, Depending on the schedule, obviously. I mean, we went
Well,
2 and
it's going
0
to be
against the SEC.
brutal.
Yeah, I mean, we went 2 and 0 against the SEC this year, though. I mean, they were
Okay.
close games, but we went 2 and 0 against them. Look, I think the 3 games that we lost this year would probably end up being the same 3 games that we would lose in the SEC. I mean, there's still the Vanderbilts. I think that Kentucky we could handle. It depends on who we get, right? Arkansas, I think, is a lot better team. Missouri, I think we'd roll against them. I think everybody beat the crap out of Texas A&M this year. So it really just depends on how the schedule will play out. I don't think that FSU would be any worse than 9-4 versus 10-3 if we played the same schedule over and over again.
Okay. So they could have success. Um,
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to. It'd be difficult for us to keep up with Georgia. Tennessee, I
it's
think everybody
difficult
was
for
having a hard
everybody.
time with. Yeah, Alabama, things like that. But I mean, across the board, you're still looking at like Tennessee had a one flash in the pan. Hey, sweetheart, had a flash in the pan. We'll see if they can sustain it. Florida's still working through some things. Auburn's been meh at best. Vandy's
Yeah, they're
Vandy. Kentucky's hot and cold, right? So, I mean, I don't think that it would have been a huge transition, or if we were to take that team that we put out last year, I don't think
well,
the
you
difference would have been
already
that
you
much.
already book Florida State every year. So
Mhm.
yeah, I don't see why not, and especially if they're going to make more money in the SEC. Um, yeah, depending on what conference they go in, definitely. Which with them absorbing Texas and Oklahoma, also, I think it's going to have to change conference wise. I think there's just going to be too many games. I don't know what they're going to do, like a round robin or what have you. But what bothers me is I wish that they shook up the SEC play a little bit more. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like there's still teams we don't ever really play. Like
Yeah, I
how
haven't
often
seen
do
you
we?
guys.
When's
Yeah,
the last
yeah,
time we played Alabama not in a title game?
yeah. Auburn in a
Auburn.
regular season game never really exists. Um,
Um. So yeah, they're and Florida Texas is going to be a good one, and Florida Oklahoma is going to be a good one. So it's going to be interesting, and especially if they get Florida State, also how they're going to break that down. I don't know.
Yeah, look, I mean, there's a lot of different things they could do. They could do a pod system that almost kind of matches what the NFL does with
Oh, don't
the
say
a.
that.
We'll see how it goes, but I mean, they've already kind of released a couple of proposed SEC rival matchups that already got Nick Saban all hot and bothered, which I loved. But like a lot of them make sense. Some of them are a little questionable. Alabama would have Auburn, LSU, and Tennessee as guaranteed rivals, which means that they lose the annual Georgia game. But I like the LSU Tennessee. Um,
So say that again. Alabama would lose the Georgia game.
yep,
I'm
yeah,
okay
they
with
would
that.
have Auburn, LSU, and Tennessee as their guaranteed opponents.
I'm okay with that, and this is why. I think it helps the SEC out a little bit,
Okay,
just because you're not going to have the cannibalism of what happened this year or 2 years ago, where we had to watch the same team twice. It's
yeah.
hard to be a team twice. You know what I mean? I'm okay with that one. But go ahead.
Arkansas, I mean, again, these are proposals. This is on CBS. I've seen a couple of different ones that were tweaked
Okay.
minorly, but so Arkansas would get kind of what we just talked about. It's almost taking them back to the old days of whatever the hell that conference was. I can't remember it. But Texas, LSU, and Missouri. All right, you can see that. I don't hate that for them. I think
What
Texas is a
do
tough
they have
draw, but they're
Florida
going to
on there?
oh yeah, for sure, for sure. Let's see. They would this one seems like it's almost a lay down for Florida, but they have Florida guaranteed, Georgia, South Carolina, and Kentucky, meaning that the Tennessee guaranteed game every year would be
In
lost,
the
which
LSU
seems weird.
game.
Yep, yep,
No, can't do that. Scratch that
yeah,
shit.
yeah. This is CBS. I mean, there's been
There's
a couple
hey,
of different models here, though.
my stepmom and her family are big LSU fans. Her nephew is an alum there, and
Okay,
I like talking shit all week, even though that LSU seems to have our number. I like talking shit all week to her. I send her little Gator gifts, uh, uh, through text and stuff. That's my favorite. So you got to keep that. And that game is freaking electric at Baton
Always,
Rouge at
always.
night.
Yep.
Man, that it's on my
Um,
bucket list to go see. And then Tennessee, you know, I think Tennessee fans would probably like it because of the emotional abuse that
sure.
Florida has really put them through. They are almost kind of like a severely battered woman when Florida comes to town. They really just like to shell up at the end and just say not again, not again. Florida's not going to hit me in the face again, and we usually do. I mean, if the game goes differently last year. You watched the Tennessee Florida game.
Oh yeah.
The onside kick, you could just see it in the stadium.
Oh, they would have been
The
done.
shell
They
shocked
would have just
look.
started walking out then. They would have known that this is the it just
It
they
would
hear
have
it,
done
it's happening
something to
again.
that. It would have done something to that program that would have been monumental. It would have been they wouldn't emotionally recoup from that
No. I don't
after
think you
all.
can. I don't think you can. Who was it? Felipe Franks that just killed him on the last second
Heave to
with a just a
cleave,
bomb.
the heave to cleave, and then there was a Callaway one. And then last year we were lined up for another one. So, and luckily, sometimes the bad guys got to win one just to keep it interesting. All those years, everybody complains about Kentucky being good again, and oh, we beat Kentucky 50 times in a row. Nobody wants to watch that. I'm
I mean,
sorry.
you do if you're winning all the time. You certainly don't want to watch the one time when you lose it.
Yeah, well, I was there last
Oh,
year.
right.
Yeah, it was a long drive, long 18-hour drive back,
Whew.
from Gainesville by myself. I don't think I even said a word. I just sat there and moped the entire car ride back, and
Yep.
I get that, but the elevated play just makes the game better. You know what I
Sure.
mean? Um, and hats off to Mark Stoops over at Kentucky because for a basketball school, now I think he's topped out there. And him and the basketball coach don't get along, so I see him getting an upgrade somewhere. I don't know exactly where, but
Yeah.
Mark Stoops really has done a terrific job bringing that dumpster fire back. So there is that.
Yeah, I'm a Stoops guy. He was the defensive coordinator for FSU for a little bit there at the start of the Jimbo era. So yeah, I was never a Stoops guy because I hated Oklahoma and I hated Bob Stoops because he was at Florida and that Oklahoma has never been kind to FSU. So the Stoops family was not my favorite, but I liked Mark Stoops when he was at FSU. So I'm a Mark Stoops fan.
All right, so we think FSU and ACC are getting divorced. The papers are written. They are headed to the courthouse, and the judge will sign off on it. And that it'll be interesting what they do. But I'm not going to keep Holly's time. We also have a live show coming in at 3:30, live call in. Thank you, Holly, for coming on. As
My man,
always,
thank you for
I
having me.
I
Absolutely.
appreciate it. It's always fun to have you on. Um, like I said, Holly from High Top Sports, go check them out. I'm sure if you're here, you know about them. They're doing big things. So I appreciate you
Go.
coming on, bud.
Love you guys, man. Glad you got that video game. Make sure you wear it out.
Yeah, I will. I'm gonna get it set up here as soon as the live stream is done on the 3:30 one. So
Sounds good,
like I
man.
said, we got another one, and then we have, I mean, action packed. We got Ty coming on tomorrow from around the table sports. He's coming on tomorrow. We're talking Alabama football. Um and then next week we are getting something set up with I'm trying to remember I'm forgetting his name. So we're going to break down some Mertz film. He does Florida football film. Um, but he's going to be on next Saturday. We'll have the Saturday live call-in show. And then we are scheduling to be on Around the Table at least once a month. So check them out, like and subscribe them. F is for Fanatic. We'll be there once a month on Friday And then next week, also on Saturday, we have a special episode of Around the Table. Since I work Fridays, he's gonna make a special exception for F is for Fanatic here, and we will have another podcast for you on Saturday. So jam packed. We're pushing the content out. So between High Top and us, there's no reason why you're not getting your content, guys.
All right, guys. Cody, I appreciate it, my man. Y'all have a great night. Go F is for Fanatics. Go High Top Sports. Y'all have a great day.
We'll see you later.
Later.